Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Dan Roberts, your host of Tech Whispers. Really glad you're here today. We have an amazing guest, a bit of a conundrum, actually. And as we get to know him a little bit, you'll see why I'm saying that. And, on the one hand, he's got a PhD in computer science from a little school in California we call Stanford. So you might know them. They're a pretty good school. On the flip side, he's got huge EQ, right? Huge empathy, very focused on the human side of the equation. So as I say, a real conundrum. On his career journey, also, he's worked at digital native companies. You'll recognize them, Yahoo, eBay, back when they were cool, by the way. And also some big brand companies, what we would call today incumbent companies, American Express, Express Scripts, Northwestern Mutual. So I could go on. I don't want to embarrass him, but I just want to give a warm welcome. But Neal Sample, CEO of Northwestern Mutual, welcome here today, Neal.
Thank you. Super happy to be here. Super happy to join you today.
So Neal, so much of your story to uncover. We don't have nearly enough time, but let's give it a shot anyways. And I think it would be important for our audience to appreciate the size, the scope, the complexity of Northwestern Mutual, and really the impact you have on people's lives. I mean, you're a Fortune 90, 165-year-old company. So I'll let you start it there.
Yeah, we are a 165-year-old company and one that's changed quite a bit over the years. We started as strictly insurance, and then in our history, a mere 35 years ago, got into investments as well, and trying to achieve a mission that we call protect and prosper now. How we can make sure that we protect our clients from the downside of the vagaries of life, help them get ready for retirement, but also grow on the upside and to take advantage of investing. For example, we have about 5 million clients, which is a significant number. But we had a statement in 1888 that we actually weren't trying to be the biggest company. We were trying to be the best, and we like to think that we achieved that. We have $34 billion in revenue, for example, but as a mutual company, basically after we take out the cost of doing business, all of the excess generated goes back to our clients. And so we don't have shareholders and policy or equity that exists externally. We don't do share buybacks or put money back out to the street. So the better we do on behalf of our clients, the better they do. And they really like our products. At the end of the day, we are the largest market leader in terms of permanent life insurance. And we have about $2.1 trillion worth of life insurance in force.
That's T for trillion.
That is T for trillion.
Right? You just say trillion, yeah. And you had said the mission going back to 1888. Now you weren't there then. I just want to clarify this.
I'm a little younger, not much, a little bit.
No, good stuff. And as we get into your leadership philosophies, Neal, your brand is all about building world-class cultures. You're big on elevating and growing your people. And my hunch is that you're all about helping people move out of their comfort zone, helping people to grow and move beyond where they are today. Or as my friend Michelle Green, who was on the podcast before, she would say the land of comfort has no growth. Does that resonate with you, Neal?
It does. It does. And, it's not only something that, I think about cultivating and elevating the folks who work for me. It's something that I practice myself. And so, when I talk about career growth, for example, it's not just a ladder. Really, a ladder that gets taller and taller is less and less stable over time. And that a career should grow more like a pyramid. That you need to build an extensive base. And I encourage people to get uncomfortable by changing one thing at a time. That one thing might be scope and scale. It might be a bigger job than they've had before. It might be changing the function. It might be that you were in architecture and now you're going to work in development. So a different function. Or in some cases, like me most recently, it might be in an entirely different industry. So I have a similar job to one that I've had before, in both scope and scale, working in technology primarily, but I've never worked in insurance before. And so my comfort is stressed by this business and having to learn the business while being able to create some value with the things that I already know. So it's absolutely essential. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. I think that's right about comfort zones.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of those muscles that you've matured over time in terms of how you go into those new opportunities, new companies, new industries. But before I go there, I'm glad for your answer because I'm going to make you a little uncomfortable right now, I think, Neal. So many people don't know this yet. I think it's public, but in August, you're going to be inducted into the CIO Hall of Fame. It's a big deal. And with your class of 2022, there will only be 162 inductees representing our profession, the best of the best of our profession. So big deal. I want to give you a congratulations. I know you don't pursue these things. I know it's not how you're wired, but they're also important too. So maybe just kind of talk about that for a second.
Well, Dan, sometimes I like to say that great minds think alike, and ours do too. So, when I think about the award, it is really good company. I will say that. Having looked at the 161 other folks there's some really admirable names in there, some really great companies, rich history of both commercial and technical achievement. But what I look to get out of it at the end of the day is really about the technology brand. It is something that our employees point to and they're very proud of. It is something that they can say, because I'll say it, they contributed to it. I didn't go out and win this any more than I went out and built this company and our technology and our stack for the last 165 years. That at the end of the day, it really is an award for them. But it's also important to the folks that don't work here yet. And I think, working at the best company, we would like to attract and retain the best talent, some of those who haven't found their way here yet. And so that's our talent brand, our technology brand in the community. And that's something this represents as well. So while I don't necessarily need to put it up on my shelf, I think from a company perspective and an employee perspective, it's a pretty neat tool to have in the toolbox.
Yeah, you've always built that talent magnet brand, which is all about retaining your great people you have today, and also attracting those, like you say, who aren't there yet and are going to be soon. And I'll give a shout out to one of your other 162 colleagues, Wayne Schertz, who introduced you and I at some point
Yes.
in the past, and so appreciate him. And now he's out doing board work because that's what we do, right? When you're done with CIO stuff, you go do board work.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that's amazing. Wayne really represents that cutting edge. It used to be that CIOs weren't candidates for boards and necessarily like operating at the sort of top of the house, if you will. And Wayne's one of those folks who's broken that mold, who's been recognized not only as a capable technologist, but as an industry leader and provides enough value to be on the board. And that's a great thing. That is a recognition that's evolved over the last, let's say, 10 years. That 20 years ago, we were back office cost center folks in many cases, weren't necessarily leading the charge within the business. And I do think that's something that's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, kind of building on that, Neal, you've had other roles yourself in some of these big companies. You've been the COO, you've had these other big jobs. As we unpack more of your story, kind of the secret sauce, the superpowers of Neal Sample, with this Tech Whispers podcast, when we reimagined it, we wanted kind of a bigger, bolder mission here. And part of that is unpacking the playbooks of the best leaders. And one of the things I find fascinating, Neal, as you approach these different situations, these different opportunities, it's not a cookie cutter, is it? This whole playbook idea. You don't just use this cookie cutter, cut and paste, here we go again.
That's true. I've been at a few companies over the years, and back in the late 90s, I was at a startup that was certainly pre-public I was at Yahoo for 7 years when we went from 3,000 people to over 20,000. I've actually been at companies older than this one, at American Express, and certainly bigger at Express Scripts. And the thing that is consistent is that every single place is different and unique, that there isn't necessarily a playbook. But what I have found is that there is a secret. And at the end of the day, the secret is the team and having the right team. And the way I like to communicate it is by saying that there is no perfect process. Something like Agile, everybody's gonna implement it in their very own way. But even a perfect process with a mediocre team is gonna generate mediocre results. On the other hand, if you have an amazing team, they can take even a mediocre process and produce amazing results. Not that that team wouldn't also be motivated to improve the process over time, clean up tech debt, do all the things that you might need to do wherever you happen to find yourself. But the playbook is going to be different everywhere. It's different domains, different technology challenges, different points on the life cycle. But the team, boy, if you can get a good, solid team, they can make just about anything happen. So that to me is really the secret sauce.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And maybe opening up your personal playbook a little bit, Neal, I find it fascinating how quickly you become part of the fabric of Northwestern Mutual. And that's a skill, that's a muscle. So as we have people in the audience who are approaching new projects, maybe new initiatives, maybe a new company, maybe like you've done, new industries, how do you approach that? What's your personal playbook for becoming part of that organization so quickly?
Well, if you can figure out the things that you know and the things that you don't know, you can figure out what you bring to the table and what's unique. And one of the things I talked about when I first got here, I was open and honest with folks that you weren't getting a CIO, for example, who'd worked for years and years in the insurance industry, that it wasn't somebody who could talk in depth about IRS Regulation 7702. And maybe I can now, but it's been a few years. And so I was humble enough to acknowledge, I guess, the things that I didn't know, which wasn't necessarily true for my entire career. But I also said, here are the things that I do know. Here are the things that I can help make better. Here are experiences from my past in related areas or in technology challenges. And so if you can connect those two dots, if you can express what you don't know and create a safe space for you to learn on your own, but also show the things that you can do to bring immediate value to something that's maybe unfamiliar territory for you. I think that's a really good recipe for success. We sort of joked when I got here that Northwestern Mutual was a target-rich environment, that you can look up on your favorite search engine, Northwestern Mutual electronic brain. And you will see that we actually bought the first commercially available mainframe from IBM, the first one that wasn't used either for government or internal. And so we like to think that we gave ourselves a rich and storied opportunity to develop tech debt. So cleaning that up is something that I've done before, and they provided me plenty of opportunities to do so. And I could do that without knowing insurance or investments or being in the financial services industry in this way before.
Well, that's certainly an interesting and fun fact and a great perspective to have, Neal. And one of the ways that we unpack the superpowers of our guests is we have a question from an outside guest. We call it the audience question, but it's somebody who knows you well, somebody who can ask a question that I would never know to ask to unpack your story. So let's listen in as we play the question, and I'd love to have you tell us who this is, the relationship you have, and also, and then jump on the question. So let's listen in.
So I have observed over the years that you're able to bring humor into situations where it can really help engage and motivate teams. Why do you think that has been so effective for you in your leadership style?
Well, first of all, this is, I would say, without a doubt, future Hall of Fame CIO, Rathi Murthy. So Rathi I've known for a lot of years, ever since the early days at Yahoo, and we'll just say at the turn of the century. when we were both there. And Rathi actually joined my team as a director of QA. And then several years later, after various roles and opportunities at places like eBay and American Express, she actually returned to Yahoo as the CTO. And so really kind of came home and ran the entire organization that she ran a very small part of before. And so she's just an incredible leader, somebody who I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with several times over the past. And so she's fantastic. As far as her question, though, I do think it's important. It is an important part of style, and that is humor. I think, if you look up on Wikipedia, the qualities of a high-performing team, you'll find that they talk about humor and levity and the ability to experience joy with one another, which isn't something that usually shows up on a metric. You usually don't have an OKR on jokes per hour in your staff meeting. That it's one of those soft skills that, again, we don't oftentimes pay a lot of attention to. When we think about our employee development or we think about our statement of values, we don't have them going out doing stand-up on a Saturday night. So that said, like the high-performing team research, and there's a lot out there, says that the ability to use levity productively to develop relationships, to diffuse situations that are otherwise tense, is a hallmark of a high-performing team. And so for me, I've always tried to make sure that that's there, and that we can laugh together and we can joke together. And it's sort of that notion of work hard and play hard. And if you can do both on the same team, it's been my observation that team's going to perform better, that's going to be better than if they're otherwise strictly focused on the material OKRs of the business.
Yeah, thank you, Rathi. Great question and helping us to learn about Neal. And Neal, I noticed you used the word joy, not fun, and duly noted. And Rathi went on to share with me, she talked about you being a calm in the storm. And you've got this ability to lead, to inspire, to grow, help people make decisions, but without you owning it, or oftentimes without you giving answers. So kind of speak to that part of your leadership style.
Well, one of the things that I, again, find important is the empowerment of the folks that work with you. There are some models out there that's the single general and many soldiers, and it's sort of top-down command and control. And I think that can work up until a particular point, up till a particular scale. If you have a small team, maybe a single agile team, that might work. On the other hand, though, I think to not only scale an operation, to lead a big organization, you have to entrust and empower. But to get the best you can out of a leadership team, they have to be able to give back as a team. They have to be able to operate as a team, not just an extension of their leader. So for me, I find that helping people find their space, maybe leading them to an answer, if it's an experience that you've had before or a mistake that you've made yourself that you can share so that they don't have to relive that mistake, that's pretty powerful. But otherwise, empowerment is key. That helping those folks and helping a team be better than the sum of their parts, that's something that I look to accomplish in my own leadership.
Yeah, the late Nelson Mandela, I know somebody who was mentored by him, and Alfred would tell me that he would never give an answer. He would only challenge him with questions. Mm-hmm. He would say, "Young man, you are not thinking, you are responding," but he said he grew so much from that, right? From that type of mentoring. And, we could spend an entire podcast, Neal, talking about the things that you're doing to know and grow and to develop your current workforce, the things you're doing to attract your future workforce. Could you just hit on some of the big rocks that you're doing? So you're doing some pretty innovative things there to build that talent magnet brand that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so I think we're doing the things that you would expect. We are definitely taking care of our employees. We're creating an exciting environment for them where they can be not only productive within their work stream, but also innovative outside their work stream. But one of the things I'm really proud of is the things that you would look at and you say, well, that's non-standard. How are you winning in this talent market? How are you promoting diversity and inclusion in a way that's different from other companies? And so one of those things is an initiative that we created with Galaxy Solutions that we call Outsourced to Milwaukee. And in Outsourced to Milwaukee, we take a different approach that we think about entry-level technologists, many of them coming from underserved communities who didn't have the same opportunity. Many of them who were maybe second career technologists who weren't necessarily going to an undergrad program with a degree in computer science, but have the will over skill, that they have the desire to learn and that they have an aptitude because they want to do these things. And so, we work to start with a self-study program. We do some training for them, and then they show up with our company, and then they do an apprenticeship, not just an internship, where they can work alongside a team. They can develop those practical experiences, and then ultimately become part of our extended workforce. And what I will tell you is it's nice to attract talent when you're not just fighting for a bigger piece of the pie, that you're actually growing the pie. It helps the market. I will say in the case of Outsourced to Milwaukee, we've certainly been able to attract a more diverse workforce than we would have otherwise. And they're highly motivated folks who are self-starters, who we think over the long term are invariably going to be one of the most critical parts of our workforce. And we also get to do it by focusing on communities that have not been as economically advantaged over time. So that's where I think we really make a difference, is when we are different, when we're taking some of these novel approaches to growing, developing, and retaining talent.
It's interesting how you describe those things. I'm always challenging CIOs when it comes to the workforce strategy. It's going to be more holistic than we have in the past. It's going to be more data driven. It's going to be more differentiated. If you're just doing the same things that the companies on the street are doing, you're not going to have any differentiation, just like with your products and services, right? And so
absolutely.
Yeah. One of the cool things we do here on the show, Neal, is we are part of our Tech for Good. I know this is a big part of your story too. Part of Tech for Good is we are donating $125,000 of scholarships to our TechLX IT Leadership Development Program. And what we get to do today is we give you the ability to gift a seat in that program to one of your nonprofits that you work with. I know that's hard because you work with so many and you support so many, but when you think about where you'd like to gift that, does anybody come to mind that you'd like to share that with?
Yeah, for us, United Way of Greater Milwaukee has a Tech United program that I participate in significantly, a member of the advisory council. We raise money for programs in the Milwaukee community that are tech focused. And one that's really powerful is the Tech for Good Marketplace. And what the Tech for Good Marketplace is, it matches support from company tech volunteers to various technology needs. And so it turns out, having a nonprofit that might get some material support, some money from something like United Way is great. But if they can't effectively deploy that because they've got technology challenges, because things are too expensive or they don't work, we find community programs, in our case, data. And the use of data initiatives, data science is particularly important. We find that we can have technologists in our company who are willing to donate their time to help do the data analysis. And so, that's something Tech for Good Marketplace is really important. And it's a way for us to not only give funds, but also give support so that other nonprofits can be more effective as well.
That's outstanding. Well, congratulations to them. Sounds like an amazing organization, and we'll certainly get them plugged in. And, I want to
thank you for that. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for that as well, Dan. That's incredibly generous. We appreciate it.
Well, we have a lot of work to do, Neal, right? In our profession to our next generation. And I love the things you're doing with Outsource Milwaukee and all these other programs. Like I say, we could dedicate an entire podcast to the different things you're doing because you're pretty passionate about this area. Unpacking some of my favorite Nealisms, some of those expressions that I've heard you use over time. One of them, Neal, is I favor action prior to perfecting a plan. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's something that I do, and I have my team do as well. We put together user guides. And so that's one of the things that shows up in those user guides, and it tells you a little bit about yourself. It's almost a cheat sheet for how to communicate with, how to get things done with teammates, and it really accelerates their ability to work together. And this is one that's definitely true for me. Sometimes I shorten it a little bit to progress over perfection. And the idea here is that definitely favoring action before getting a perfect plan is invariably going to lead you to a better place. You could, for example, finish a perfect template that takes a few months to develop, or you could just go out and collect data and clean it up after the fact. And maybe the data leads you to a different place. And so there are many times in my career that I've found this to be true. The irony is perhaps I brought it from an old computer science maxim around query planning and databases, that query planners are all done on heuristics. They're estimates, they're estimations, they're guesses as to whether or not something is going to go well, whether or not a query will run quickly or slowly. But what's interesting is any plan is faster than figuring out what the actual fastest plan is. Because in order to be sure about it, because they're all estimates, you actually have to run them all. And so the idea of progress over perfection is that getting started oftentimes gets you to the finish line faster. And it oftentimes helps you avoid mistakes that you don't even know you're making because you're not in the process yet.
That is fascinating. That is really interesting. I told you all at the beginning, the conundrum of Neal Sample, right? PhD in computer science. We just got a little glimpse and all the EQ that goes with it. So, Neal, I'm going to take us out with a lightning round. You're known for being fast on your feet. You are a national debater in college, and which is part of your skill set, part of your story. But I'm going to throw some words at you, and just what comes to mind, right? As I throw these words to you. So the first one is going to be speed.
Navy SEALs, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah. Just say another sentence about that. That's
Absolutely.
I love that.
Listen, it is one of those powerful concepts, and it shows up in different ways. It's measure twice, cut once. It's slow down because we're in a hurry. The idea that if you can move slowly and deliberately and cautiously, that you will avoid mistakes, that you will avoid errors, that you will take in the environment, you'll see what's done around you, and ultimately, that is going to be as fast as you can possibly be. That running headlong in the dark is not particularly deliberate, and it'll be fast right until you run into a brick wall. So one of the things that they say is slow is smooth and smooth is fast, because you don't have to repeat yourself. You've got an economy and efficiency of motion, and you won't rework because you won't make mistakes.
Brilliant. Second word, curiosity.
Curiosity is tremendously important. I think of curiosity and its partner candor, getting folks on teams to ask the question why, to challenge history, to evaluate a process, to get underneath an OKR, to figure out what the value behind the value is. Because if you're doing a job and you don't know why, you won't have the opportunity to create something even better. I find some of my best technologists will hear, for example, a requirement from a product partner, and they'll say, you know what? I understand what you're going for. I can get you 80% of the value at 50% of the cost. What do you think? And I'll tell you, those are the moments when someone in technology who's maybe a great delivery partner becomes an incredible business partner because they're able to get more value out of it. And that comes back to curiosity, knowing the business and knowing what's possible.
So much there. That gets us out of that order taker history we've been fighting, and a different way of showing up. Last one for you, Neal. It's actually not a word. It's an acronym, which I shouldn't do, but it's an acronym that I don't hear CIOs mention very often. And the acronym is BATNA, BATNA. So what is that, and why is that so important to you?
Yeah, so a BATNA is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And really, it is what is the next best thing, if you think about it. And oftentimes, we find ourselves as technologists negotiating. And we think of the obvious ones. We're maybe negotiating with a vendor or a supplier or a partner. And what are the alternatives? What are the other vendors, suppliers, partners, software, et cetera? But oftentimes it's also true internally that I don't know the CIO that has an infinite amount of talent and an infinite amount of treasure and can therefore do everything in that infinite amount of time. And so given that all three of those things have limits, the idea is to know what are the alternatives. So for example, you might find yourself with a mountain of tech debt, purely hypothetical, of course. And you could stop the world and try to finish all of the tech debt off, try to put it to bed, try to do your refactoring and your upgrades and your retirements. But that probably wouldn't sound great to the business, who would like to get some new products out there, some new capabilities, some new experiences, some new back office efficiencies. And so the ability to help make those trade-offs rather than merely be subject to them is pretty powerful. It's one of those ways that as technologists, we can add incremental value. It makes us consider our own opportunities. It makes us put a price on tech debt, for example, so that we can compare it to the commercial opportunities and what is the difference between those two, and therefore make a powerful recommendation on the way we should go. So a lot of folks use it thinking about external negotiations, negotiating with vendors or partners, what are walkaways, what are alternatives, et cetera. But I find that it's really valuable if you're understanding it to optimize your portfolio inside the company as well.
Neal, so good. Speaking of powerful, this has been a powerful conversation. We've covered so much ground. And I want to let people know that you and I are going to continue the conversation and publish in a week from now on CIO.com, on CIO Whispers, a blog post. We're going to unpack some of your perspectives on technology trends and differentiators from that perspective. So, Neal, on behalf of our entire community, our entire audience, thanks so much for joining us on Tech Whispers.
Dan, thank you for having me today. It's been delightful, amazing questions, and you've given us a real platform to talk about something we're passionate about. We appreciate it.
Outstanding. We'll have you back again, Neal, and we'll see you all again soon.